Ladies, listen carefully, because what I'm about to say might change the entire dynamic of your situation. There's a man in your life right now, you feel it, there's a connection. The way he looks at you, the way he lingers just a second longer in conversation, the subtle nervousness when he's around you. And yet he's not making a move, he's not saying the words, he's not stepping forward. Why? Because he wants you, but he won't admit it. Not yet. Desire without action is fear disguised as control. This idea may seem confusing at first, because when someone desires us, we expect them to act on it. Call, text, ask us out, show up consistently. But in reality, many people live in the in-between space of wanting something deeply, and yet doing absolutely nothing about it. For a man, desire can be incredibly vulnerable. Admitting that he wants someone means stepping into uncertainty. It means possibly getting rejected, misunderstood, or being told he's not enough. And so, instead of stepping forward, he remains still. He controls what he can. His silence, his distance, the illusion of calm indifference. This is how control becomes a shield. It's safer to hide behind vague conversations, sporadic messages, and non-committal behaviors than to openly express desire and risk the consequences. What often looks like disinterest or emotional unavailability is actually a man wrestling with his fear of losing control. He may want you badly, think about you constantly, replay your conversations, and feel his heart race every time you show up on his phone. But his behavior doesn't match those feelings because acting on them would force him to face something he's not ready for, his own emotional exposure. Control provides a false sense of power. As long as he's not making a move, he can convince himself that he's still in charge of the situation. He can tell himself that he's taking his time or waiting for the right moment, but often it's just fear running the show. Fear of rejection, fear of intimacy, fear of not being good enough. By staying passive, he avoids the risk of those fears being proven true. Yet in doing so, he also sacrifices the potential of something real. The irony is that this attempt to control usually leads to loss. While he's busy protecting himself, time passes. You begin to notice the inconsistency. You start to wonder why the words never match the vibe. You slowly pull away, not out of malice, but because you have a life to live, and eventually the silence becomes too loud to ignore. Still, he doesn't act, not because he doesn't care, but because fear has wrapped itself so tightly around his desire that he can no longer distinguish one from the other. Desire is supposed to inspire movement. It's supposed to push someone forward, to make them reach, strive, pursue. But fear convinces the mind that movement is dangerous, that exposure is unsafe. So he stalls, thinking that if he holds his cards close, he won't get hurt. In truth, he's already hurting because desire without action becomes frustration, longing, regret. And the more time he spends trying to control the narrative, the more he loses touch with the very thing he wants. Many women blame themselves when a man doesn't step up. They wonder if they were too much or not enough. They overanalyze every interaction, looking for clues, trying to decode mixed signals. But oftentimes, the problem isn't in the woman at all. It's in the man's inability to move through his own fear. When his desire stays unspoken, it's not because you didn't spark it. It's because he hasn't yet developed the courage to face what that desire demands of him. Real desire demands vulnerability. It requires a leap, a surrender, a letting go of the illusion of control. But if a man has learned that vulnerability is weakness, or that expressing emotion makes him less masculine, then he'll resist that leap. He'll wait, watch, hesitate, and in doing so, he'll live in that limbo where he wants you deeply, but does nothing to earn you. Control tells him he's safe, but what it really does is imprison him in his own inaction. He won't admit his feelings until your energy says you don't need him to. This is the shift that changes everything. You can't beg someone into opening up. You can't force clarity through pressure, nor can you guilt someone into revealing their truth. But the moment your energy shifts from waiting to thriving, from needing to choosing, from hoping to knowing your worth, that's when the game changes. Because men don't fall for neediness, they fall for certainty, certainty in who you are, certainty in how you carry yourself, certainty that your life is already full, with or without him. There's something incredibly magnetic about a woman who's not trying to convince someone to like her. It's not arrogance, it's grounded self-worth. It's that quiet confidence that says, I know what I bring to the table and I don't need to prove it. When your energy reflects that truth, you stop looking for signs, stop waiting for calls, stop building stories off mixed messages. Instead, you start showing up for yourself, and that subtle but powerful shift tells him something deeper than words ever could. It tells him that he no longer has the upper hand. It tells him that his silence isn't going to keep you on the hook. It tells him that if he wants to step in, he'll need to do it fully. When a man senses that you are no longer emotionally dependent on his recognition, it disrupts the dynamic he's become comfortable with. If he was used to you being available, initiating, or lingering in emotional limbo, your detachment can feel like a jolt. But this is exactly what creates clarity. People often don't realize what they feel until the absence of your energy forces them to confront it. Your withdrawal, not as a tactic, but as a natural response to your own growth, becomes the mirror that reflects what they've been avoiding. It pushes them to make a decision, either step forward or step out. Many women stay stuck in a cycle of waiting for a man to confess, clarify, or commit. They think if they just stay patient long enough, if they just keep being understanding, he'll eventually figure it out. But time doesn't always create clarity, sometimes it deepens confusion. What creates clarity is contrast. When your energy goes from pursuit to presence, from anxious to anchored, it creates that contrast. He no longer feels needed to complete your emotional story, and that makes him curious. It makes him question why you've changed. It makes him wonder if he's about to lose something valuable. You don't have to say, I'm done. You don't need to post quotes about self-love. You don't have to announce your detachment. Your energy speaks louder than any declaration. When you move differently, when you stop reacting to breadcrumbs, when you no longer engage in vague conversations that go nowhere, he'll feel it. He may not say anything right away. In fact, he might test the waters, send a casual text, check your stories, try to bait a reaction. But what he's really looking for is evidence that he still has emotional access to you. If he doesn't find it, he'll either step up or disappear. Either way, you win. Men often admit their feelings when they feel safe. Not just safe from judgment, but safe from the fear of rejection or losing control. Ironically, they also admit their feelings when they feel they're at risk of losing someone who no longer needs them. It's in that tension between safety and scarcity that the truth surfaces. When your energy communicates that you are whole, not waiting, not hoping, just fully living, that's when he realizes that if he wants you, he has to be honest. Not because you demanded it, but because your energy no longer allows space for anything less. Raising your standard changes the dynamic without saying a word. It's not about posting about your worth or telling people what they should do. It's about quietly, internally shifting what you accept. Standards are not spoken, they're lived. A woman with high standards doesn't need to convince anyone to treat her well. She simply moves in a way where anything less than respect doesn't even enter her world. And this has a profound effect on how men perceive and respond to her. When you raise your standard, you raise the bar for what gets to stay in your life. People can feel the difference between a woman who says she has standards and one who actually enforces them. When your standard is high, it's not about perfection or having unrealistic expectations. It's about self-awareness and emotional discipline. You stop making excuses for behavior that confuses you. You no longer romanticize potential. You don't chase clarity. You allow people to show who they are through their actions and adjust accordingly. This quiet firmness is what creates impact. You don't need to explain your boundaries to someone who is serious about meeting them. Men are incredibly responsive to energy. If you tolerate inconsistency, they will assume it's acceptable. If you reward half-hearted effort with full attention, they will continue to give the minimum. But when your standard shifts, when you stop engaging unless someone shows up with clarity, consistency, and respect, it forces a man to either rise or leave. And that's the power you hold, not in trying to change him, but in being unshakable in what you expect and allow. This doesn't mean you cut people off cold or become emotionally rigid. It means you create space between the woman you are and the version of you who used to accept less just to feel wanted. You don't have to scream your standard. It shows in your silence. It shows in how quickly you walk away from someone who brings confusion instead of clarity. It shows in how you respond when someone disappears and then tries to come back as if nothing happened. It shows in how you protect your peace, how you value your time, how you don't hand over emotional real estate to someone who hasn't earned your trust. This type of standard doesn't chase, doesn't settle, and doesn't pretend. And that is deeply attractive to someone who is ready for a real connection. The most magnetic energy in the world is a woman who knows what she wants and doesn't apologize for it. She doesn't pressure, she doesn't beg, she doesn't try to convince someone of her value. She simply lives in alignment with it. That kind of energy forces the people around her to either meet her at that level or remove themselves. It's not personal, it's energetic. And for a man who's genuinely interested but hesitant, it creates urgency. It forces him to decide because she won't be waiting forever. What most people don't realize is that standards are not limitations, they are invitations. They invite the right kind of behavior. They invite growth. They invite truth. When you elevate your standard, you start attracting people who are either ready to match it or who reveal their inability to do so very quickly. Either way, you gain clarity. Either way, you stop wasting emotional energy trying to decode someone's intentions. The standard does the work for you. There's no need for dramatics when your standards are clear. You don't have to argue your worth or explain why certain behavior doesn't feel good. You simply don't respond to anything beneath the level of love, consistency, and respect you've committed to receiving. And that creates a new dynamic, one where people have to either grow into a higher version of themselves to be in your presence or step aside and make room for someone who already has. Living fully makes you magnetic, neediness repels, confidence attracts. There's an undeniable shift that happens when you stop waiting for someone else to give your life meaning and instead decide to live deeply, intentionally, and joyfully on your own terms. That energy is powerful. It draws people in without effort because you're not seeking something to complete you. You've already arrived whole. Confidence isn't about arrogance or being loud. It's the quiet certainty that you are already enough. It's walking into a room not looking for attention, but naturally commanding it because of how you carry yourself. This kind of confidence doesn't beg for love or demand validation. It exudes self-respect, and that is irresistible. Neediness, on the other hand, sends a very different signal. It says, "I don't feel whole without you." It creates pressure. It puts the emotional weight of your happiness on someone else's shoulders, and most people, even if they care, will pull away when they feel that kind of expectation. That's not because they're cold or heartless, but because true connection can only grow when it's free, not when it's driven by fear of being alone. When someone feels like they have to save you from your own emptiness, the spark dies quickly. It becomes an emotional burden rather than a romantic pull. But when you're living fully, your energy becomes expansive. You're not just existing, you're engaged with life. You have passions you're learning, you're taking care of your body and mind. You're laughing, connecting, creating. You're not waiting for texts to make your day. You're making your own day meaningful. And from that space, the love you attract isn't born out of lack, but out of overflow. People feel good around that energy. They want to be part of your world, not because they feel needed, but because they feel inspired. You're not chasing anyone, and you're not proving anything. You're just being yourself, fully and unapologetically. Confidence shows up in the small things, how you say no when something doesn't feel right, how you speak your truth even when your voice shakes, how you don't shrink yourself to be liked. It shows in how you stay centered when someone pulls away, because you trust that what's meant for you will not require chasing. When you live from that place, people can't help but notice. They may not be able to put it into words, but they'll feel it. And more importantly, the ones who are aligned with your energy will be drawn in naturally. There's a reason why people often find love the moment they stop looking for it. It's not magic, it's energy. When you're no longer trying to fill a void, when you're no longer needing someone to choose you to feel worthy, your frequency changes. You start to attract from a place of wholeness, not hunger. That's when emotionally available people enter your life, because your vibration no longer resonates with confusion or inconsistency. You don't have to tolerate mixed signals, because you've built a life that feels too good to interrupt with emotional chaos. People mirror what you reflect. If you show up with neediness, you attract situations that reinforce the belief that you need fixing. But if you show up fully alive, even in your flaws, you create a mirror for others to rise into their best selves. You become a space where connection can thrive, not because you're perfect, but because you're real. And there's nothing more attractive than someone who is real, confident, and deeply connected to their own life. When you're in love with your own journey, you naturally become the kind of person others want to journey with. The fear of losing you awakens feelings he's been trying to suppress. For a long time, he may have kept his emotions under wraps, tucked neatly behind casual texts, playful banter, and moments of vague affection. He might have been charming, present in fleeting ways, and yet never fully available. Not because he didn't feel anything, but because feeling something meant taking action, and action meant vulnerability. So he avoided that. He stayed in the safety zone, where he could enjoy your presence without ever committing to it. But everything begins to change the moment he senses that your emotional energy is no longer tethered to him. There is something about the potential loss of a woman who once made space for him, emotionally and energetically, that rattles a man more than anything else, not because he took you for granted in a malicious way, but because he assumed you'd always be there. He thought he had time. He believed that as long as he offered just enough to keep you guessing, you'd stay emotionally engaged. He didn't consider that one day you'd wake up and decide that you deserved more than inconsistency and emotional breadcrumbs. When that moment comes, your detachment becomes louder than any words you could say. Suddenly, your silence speaks volumes. Your absence begins to feel heavier than your presence ever did. The texts you don't send, the calls you don't return, the emotional availability you no longer offer. All of it becomes a wake-up call. And in that space where your attention used to live, he is forced to sit with the feelings he tried so hard to avoid. He begins to question what he thought was control. He starts to feel the discomfort of missed chances and emotional avoidance. It's not about playing games or manipulating emotion. It's about reclaiming your power and recognizing that someone who truly wants you will not risk losing you through inaction. The moment you stop showing up the way you used to is the moment he starts to feel what you felt all along: uncertainty, longing, confusion. And through that discomfort, he becomes aware of what you actually meant to him. Because until now, your consistent presence shielded him from that reality. It kept him comfortable. But when the comfort is gone, the truth surfaces. This is when he starts replaying moments in his head. The way you looked at him, the way you supported him, the little things you did that no one else noticed, and he realizes, maybe for the first time, that the connection wasn't just casual, it wasn't just a phase. It was something real that he didn't fully honor. That realization can come with a wave of panic, a sense of urgency that wasn't there before. Now he's the one wondering what you're feeling, who you're talking to, whether someone else is noticing what he failed to claim. When someone finally recognizes that they might lose you, it forces clarity, it forces honesty, it makes them confront their own emotional blocks. Sometimes it inspires growth, a willingness to do the inner work and step up. Other times, it exposes that they weren't ready after all. Either way, the truth comes out not because you demanded it, but because your shift in energy made it impossible to ignore. You moved, and that movement broke the illusion that they had time. People often don't act until something is at stake. And when it comes to love, nothing shakes a man more than realizing the woman who once waited, who once made room for him, who once hoped, has started to move on. That awareness doesn't come from conversations. It comes from experience. He has to feel the absence to understand the presence. He has to miss what you gave him effortlessly before he can begin to appreciate what he no longer has access to. The moment you stop waiting to be chosen and start choosing yourself is the moment everything shifts. He may want you deeply, but won't admit it until your energy no longer clings to the hope of being wanted. Your power isn't in convincing him. It's in becoming so aligned with your own worth that he either rises to meet you or fades into the background where confusion no longer has a place. When you raise your standards, live fully, and let your confidence lead, you awaken something he's been too afraid to confront. The reality that you were never his to keep by default, but someone he needed to earn with intention. It's in your quiet strength, not your pursuit, that the truth of his feelings finally surfaces. And by then, the choice won't be his anymore. It will be yours.